She stole $200, $0 from our shared account and secretly sold the family house behind my back, then lied about everything. Now she's claiming I owe her for half of the property valuation in a heated court battle I never saw coming. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing a story about betrayal like this, but honestly, I don't see any other way to get it off my chest. The craziest part, it all started with a gut feeling that something was just off. Like I couldn't put my finger on it at first, but then I started noticing the little things. Sarah's phone always being locked, her sneaky looks when she thought I wasn't paying attention, and how she suddenly became super secretive about money. We'd been married for 7 years and I thought I knew her inside out. Turns out I knew nothing. It all unraveled one afternoon when I went to check our bank account online. I don't usually do that, but I was curious about some bills I'd forgotten to pay. That's when I saw it, a withdrawal of $200, $0 from our shared account, just gone. I froze. My heart dropped. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could she just take that much money? I started digging deeper, and that's when I found out she'd been secretly selling the family house behind my back. She convinced the real estate agent she was the sole owner and she'd already signed the papers without my knowledge or consent. The more I looked, the worse it got. I found out she'd been lying about everything, saying she was saving for a big trip, claiming she needed the money for emergencies. But the truth was she'd been planning this for months. And the house, she sold it without even telling me. I kept thinking, how could she do this? How could she betray me like that, steal our life savings, and then lie to my face about it? It felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I had no idea she was capable of this kind of deception. I remember sitting there, staring at the screen, my mind racing. I called her immediately and she picked up with that fake, sweet tone she always uses. "Hey babe, what's up?" she said, acting innocent. I couldn't hold back. I told her I knew everything, that I knew she'd taken the money, sold the house, and lied to me. There was a silence on the other end that felt deafening. Then she started crying, but not the genuine kind, more like the kind someone puts on when they're caught red-handed. She kept insisting she was doing it for us, that she needed the money to pay off debts to keep the family afloat, that she never meant to hurt me. Yeah, right, I was furious. Not just angry, but a mix of shock and heartbreak. I had trusted her, loved her, built a life with her, and she was out there secretly screwing everything up for what? Some affair. Because I'd noticed her phone was always buzzing with texts late at night. I'd seen her flinch whenever I got close to her phone. I even caught her once deleting messages, but I didn't think much of it at the time. Now I knew she'd been sneaking around, probably with some guy she met at her new job or some online thing. It all clicked, the late nights, the unexplained absences, her mood swings. The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was emotional. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. All those years of marriage, all the plans we made, gone in an instant. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to understand how she could do this to me. How she could lie so convincingly, sell our home behind my back, and take our savings like some kind of petty thief. It was surreal. I was hurt, angry, and confused. I started questioning everything I thought I knew about her, about us. And honestly, I felt like I was losing my mind. After I confronted her that night, things only got worse. Sarah sat there, eyes wide and innocent, like she hadn't just stolen $250,000 from our joint account and sold our house without telling me. She kept insisting she'd done it all for us, that she had a plan, and that I just didn't understand. Her voice was sweet but cold, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. I was beyond furious, but I also felt this deep, sinking sadness. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could someone I loved turn into this manipulative stranger? I remember the moment clearly. I looked at her and for a second I saw a different person. Not my wife, more like a stranger with a mask. I felt betrayed on every level. I'd always thought Sarah was the responsible one, the one who kept our little life together steady. She was the bitchy type, always throwing tantrums when things didn't go her way, but I never thought she'd cross this line. Never thought she'd betray me so thoroughly. I mean, she always acted like she loved me, like I was her everything. And yet behind my back she was planning her escape, selling the house, stealing our savings, and probably screwing some other guy or guys. That night I sat there, staring at the phone, trying to process what I'd just heard. She kept crying, saying she was sorry, but her words felt hollow. Sorry for what? For getting caught. Sorry she got exposed. Sorry she was about to lose everything. She'd been secretly planning. It was all a lie. I knew she was lying because I found out she had been seeing someone else, another guy from her office, I later learned. She'd been sneaking out late, texting him, meeting him in secret. I saw the receipts on her phone, the messages that were so explicit I couldn't believe I missed all the signs. It hit me then. This wasn't just about money. It was about her betrayal, her lying, her cheating. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach 100 times. I thought about all the moments I'd shared with her, the good, the bad, the boring. All of it felt meaningless now. I was trying to stay calm, but inside I was furious. I wanted to scream, to yell at her, to break something. But I knew that wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I just sat there, numb, staring at her tears, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. I decided I had to get control of the situation. First thing the next morning, I called my lawyer. I needed to understand my legal options. I wanted her to face the consequences. I also started digging into our bank records, looking for any other signs of her deception. Turns out she'd been draining the account over the past few months, siphoning off money bit by bit. I found transactions for luxury hotels, designer clothes, even a few expensive dinners with her secret lover. It was like she was living a double life, one that I had no idea about. The next day, I went to see a private investigator. I needed proof, concrete evidence of what she'd been up to. I couldn't just take her word for it anymore. I had to know how deep this rabbit hole went. While I waited for the results, I couldn't help but think about how blindly I'd trusted her, how I'd always believed she was the one. And now, I was wondering if I'd ever truly known her at all. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew that whatever came next, nothing would be the same again. The investigators' report confirmed what I already suspected. Sarah had been sneaking around for months. Not just with the guy from her office, but with multiple people, I later found out. She'd been living a double life, and the extent of her deception was staggering. She'd sold the house to some shady buyer, forged documents, and even managed to hide the proceeds. The lawyer explained that she had essentially wiped us out financially and then tried to claim half of everything in court, saying I owed her for half of the property valuation. I couldn't believe her audacity. I started thinking about how this all came to be. Sarah always had a bitchy streak, but I never thought she'd go this far. She was always the one throwing tantrums when things didn't go her way, but I guess she'd been planning her escape for a long time. I remembered the late nights she'd spend on her phone, the secretive trips she'd take without telling me where she was going. All those little signs that I brushed off, thinking she was just stressed or busy. Turns out she was hiding a whole other life. I remember the day I decided I'd had enough. I sat her down, told her I knew everything. The affair, the money, the house. Her reaction was classic Sarah. She started crying, claiming she still loved me, that she was sorry, and that she didn't mean to hurt me. She looked me in the eyes and said, "It's not about the money, Jake. I just needed to get out of this marriage. You were always so controlling. I needed freedom." Yeah, right, that was her excuse. She tried to make me feel guilty, like I was the bad guy for catching her, but I wasn't buying it. I told her I wanted a divorce and I wanted her out of my life. I'd been betrayed on every level, financially, emotionally, sexually. She'd been sleeping with her lover, spending our savings, and selling our home behind my back. I felt a deep rage boiling inside me. How could she do this? How could she lie for so long? I kept thinking about all the nights I'd stayed up, trying to be understanding, trying to fix things, and she was out there screwing someone else. It was like I'd been living a nightmare. I also discovered that she'd been claiming I owed her money, half of the property valuation, trying to manipulate the court into giving her a bigger share. That's when I realized she was trying to pull a fast one, thinking she could get away with it because I was blindsided. But I had proof now. The court documents, the bank records, the investigators' report, everything was on my side. I was ready to fight and I was determined to expose her lies. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. But at the same time, I knew I had to stay strong. I couldn't let her see me break. I started gathering my documents, reaching out to lawyers, and preparing for the inevitable court battle. I knew she'd lie, distort the truth, and probably try to turn everyone against me. That's what she did. She was manipulative, bitchy, and relentless. I just hoped I had enough evidence to prove what she'd done and to protect what was left of my life. As I sat in my apartment, staring at the pile of papers and receipts, I realized something. This wasn't just about money or a house. It was about betrayal on a level I'd never imagined. I'd loved her, cared for her, built a life with her. And she'd thrown it all away for some affair, some reckless scheme. I was hurt, yes, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do. I'd fight for what was mine, and I'd make sure she paid for what she'd done. The road ahead was going to be tough, but I was done being the victim. It was time to take control. The court date came faster than I expected, and I was ready. At least I thought I was. I had all my evidence lined up: bank statements, the investigator's report, the forged documents showing she sold the house, messages from her lover, and the receipts of all her spending with the stolen money. I remember walking into the courtroom feeling a mixture of anger and determination. Sarah sat there, looking smug and bitchy as hell, trying to act innocent. She kept throwing glances at me, like she was trying to manipulate the judge, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The hearing started with her lawyer arguing that she deserved half of the property because she'd contributed to the marriage. That was her big play, trying to claim she had some right to half of everything, even though she'd sold the house behind my back and stolen our savings. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly at her audacity. I knew I had the evidence to blow her story out of the water. I was prepared to expose her lies, and I did just that. When it was my turn to speak, I laid it all out. I explained how she'd been secretly selling the house, draining our account, and cheating on me with someone from her office. I showed the court the forged documents, the bank records, the receipts. I told them how she'd lied to my face, how she'd manipulated the situation, and how she tried to turn the court against me by claiming I owed her money. I could see her squirming in her seat, realizing her house of cards was collapsing. The judge looked at all the evidence carefully, asking questions that Sarah struggled to answer convincingly. Midway through, her lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to some kind of equitable share, but I cut him off. I pointed out that she had no legal right to the house after selling it without my consent, and that she had no claim to the stolen money because she'd embezzled it from our joint account. I told the court everything: the affair, the secret spending, the betrayal, and how she'd been trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. Honestly, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders when I saw her face fall. She didn't expect me to come prepared, and I could tell she was losing control of the narrative. The judge listened carefully, and after a long pause, he made his ruling. He ordered Sarah to return all the money she'd stolen, including the proceeds from the house sale, and awarded me full custody of the remaining assets. She was also ordered to pay damages for the financial loss she caused. I remember feeling a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I finally had some justice. Anger because I knew she'd lie and manipulate her way out of things if she could. But that wasn't the end. Sarah's reaction was classic. She screamed and yelled, claiming she was the victim, that I was trying to ruin her, that I was a ruthless control freak. She called me every name in the book, trying to spin her lies, but I didn't care. I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to back it up. The court had spoken, and I finally felt like I was getting some closure. After the hearing, I watched her storm out of the courtroom, still screaming about how I owed her half of everything. I just stood there, exhausted but relieved. I knew this wasn't the end. She'd try to fight back, probably with more lies and manipulation. But for now, I had won a major battle. I had taken back control of my life, and I was determined to rebuild from here. I realized I'd been living in a nightmare, but the nightmare was finally starting to fade. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was still standing, and I was ready to move on no matter how much it hurt. The aftermath of the court ruling was a whirlwind. Sarah, of course, refused to accept defeat quietly. She immediately started planning her next move, trying to twist the story in her favor with anyone willing to listen. She went around claiming that I was a controlling, jealous husband who had ruined her life, all because I uncovered her lies. But the truth was, I didn't care any more about her sob stories or her manipulative tactics. I had what I needed: the court's ruling, the proof of her deception, and the clarity to finally see her for who she really was. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I hired a new lawyer to deal with the final financial settlements, and I started the process of selling what was left of our assets, things she hadn't managed to hide or steal. I also moved out of the apartment we shared, finding a new place to start fresh. The pain of betrayal was still there, but I was determined not to let it define me. I knew I had to take care of myself now, emotionally, financially, and mentally. What surprised me most was how quickly I realized the extent of her new lies. One day, I got a call from a neighbor who mentioned seeing Sarah with a new guy, a younger guy, maybe in his late 20s. I felt a pang of anger and disgust. She'd been out there, already moving on, while I was left to pick up the pieces. That was the moment I decided I wouldn't let her ruin me completely. I cut ties with her entirely, blocked her on all social media, and told my friends to stay out of her drama. I needed to focus on myself, on healing. But the biggest shock came when I learned she'd been trying to sue me for half of the property valuation in court. She claimed I owed her because she'd contributed equally to our marriage, despite all the lies and theft. I couldn't believe her audacity. She was trying to rewrite history, pretending she was the victim. I had to get even more legal help to counter her claims. I knew I had the evidence, but it was exhausting to keep fighting her lies. Still, I refused to back down. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of it. My friends and family kept telling me I was lucky to get out when I did, that I deserved better. Honestly, I didn't know what to feel most of the time: anger, sadness, relief, or exhaustion. It was a roller coaster. I'd spent so many nights trying to understand why she did it, why she lied, why she cheated. And the only answer I kept coming back to was that she was selfish, completely unwilling to take responsibility for her actions. She lied, stolen, manipulated, and then tried to play the victim. Now I'm in a different place. I still have scars, but I'm learning to live with them. I've started therapy, and I've been focusing on my career and my own happiness. I don't trust easily anymore, but I'm working on that. The lesson I learned: never ignore the red flags. Never assume someone is who they seem to be. And most of all, don't let betrayal break you. Use it as fuel to rebuild stronger. Looking back, I wish I'd seen the signs earlier, but I also know I can't change the past. What I can do is move forward, smarter and more cautious. If there's one thing I want others to take from this, it's that even when you're blindsided, you have the strength to fight back. Sometimes the truth comes out in court, and sometimes it takes a lot of pain to get there. But in the end, honesty and integrity matter. And I'm proud I stood up for myself, even when it felt like everything was falling apart. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me, maybe forever. I used to believe in fairy tale endings, in trusting someone completely, but betrayal like this shatters that illusion. It's not easy to come to terms with the fact that the person you loved and trusted turned out to be the biggest liar and thief you've ever known. Still, I've learned some things I wouldn't have otherwise. First, never ignore the small signs. The secretive texts, the late-night absences, the sudden interest in expensive things, those were all red flags I brushed aside. I guess I was too comfortable, too trusting. But now I see that trust has to be earned, and even then, you have to stay vigilant. No one is immune to betrayal, especially when they're hiding things. Second, I learned that confronting the truth is the hardest but most necessary step. It's painful to face the reality that someone you loved so much could lie and steal from you, but avoiding it only makes everything worse. Being honest with myself helped me accept what happened and start the process of healing. It's a long road, and there are days when I still feel angry or sad, but I remind myself that I'm stronger than that. Third, I found out that justice isn't always about winning in court or getting revenge. Sometimes it's about reclaiming your peace and dignity. The court case was a way to hold her accountable, but the real victory was in finally standing up for myself and taking control of my life again. I've come to terms with the fact that I can't change her, but I can choose how I respond. Finally, I want anyone reading this to know that even when you're blindsided by betrayal, you're not alone. It hurts like hell and it feels like your world is crashing down, but you can survive it. You can rebuild. The pain will fade, and what remains will be a stronger, wiser version of yourself. Trust takes time to regain, but it's worth it. Love yourself enough to walk away from toxicity, to set boundaries, and to never let anyone steal your happiness again. Looking back, I see what I've gained from this nightmare: resilience, self-awareness, a sharper sense of who I am and what I deserve. I still have scars, sure, but they're scars of survival, not defeat. I hope my story serves as a warning and a reminder. Don't ignore the red flags. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them, because the truth always comes out sooner or later. And when it does, you'll know what you're truly made of.